Tonight, President Cyril Ramaphosa has filed a motion in the Constitutional Court to take the Section 89 report on review. What are the impacts of this move on the President's future, but also on the parliamentary debate that's scheduled to go ahead tomorrow? Associate Professor in Public Law at the University of Cape Town, Professor Richard Calland, joins us tonight. Richard, good evening to you and welcome. These documents have just come to hand. The 59-page document asks in the application, amongst other things, for the report to be reviewed, declared unlawful and set aside. Give us your thoughts on the move that the President's made tonight.
Well, first of all, Iman, good evening to you. Secondly, it was essential, legally and politically, that the President bring this review application. For his argument, both legally, constitutionally and politically, to have credibility, he had to, in a sense, put his money where his mouth was and bring this application. And his lawyers have drafted well-constructed papers that on the face of it make out a relatively strong case.
All right, our signal with Richard not the very best, which is unfortunate because it will be key, I think, to ask what the next step is. Of course, also to examine the route that the President's taken in going directly to the apex court. There is also 1.4 in the opening of that review application that one of the prayers from the President is for the Constitutional Court to declare that any steps taken by the National Assembly pursuant to the report are equally found to be unlawful and invalid. And this is one of the key questions then about what happens tomorrow. Let me just establish if we still have Richard on the line and whether he's heard that question in terms of what happens tomorrow. All right. We've lost the signal to Richard right now, but what we want to do is show you some picture. On this night of decision, I think for many people, but for, I imagine, the governing party, more specifically, a lot of focus around the announcement that they will make. You heard from our reporter, Samkele Maseko, a little bit earlier on, that the decision is a firm support for the President. Let's show you the media clutch just outside the venue there, where news conference, we understand, is going to be given by the Treasurer General of the ANC, Paul Mashatile, to the media around what the decision and the developments are tonight. So let me show you and take you there right now and just give you a sense of what's happening there. They're just getting ready. This normally happens before a news conference. You've seen it many, many times. And I suppose, Bongiwe, our viewers have seen this as well. Over the weekend, we've had a number of updates coming out of Nasrec in anticipation of the NEC and the NWC meetings. All of those processes now concluded. We saw visuals earlier on of former President Thabo Mbeki also leaving the venue, signaling the end of that meeting. And so we wait in great anticipation to hear from the mouths of the ANC and its leadership what the decision is on the President's future. Richard, I know I've got you back, and I'm sorry that we lost you there, but I think you wanted to just round off the answer that you were sharing with me, which is this is the best move the President could have made, and this is a well-constructed review application.
Well, yes. I hope you can hear me better now. I think I should leave the Zoom address on the telephone. So I hope you can hear me now, Iman. The situation is that this was a necessary application that the President needed to bring, both in terms of law and politics, in the sense that if his attempt to set this aside, to fight on and hold on to the presidency was to have credibility, he needed to walk the talk of his and his supporters' claims that this report did not have the impeccable foundation stones that was required of something so serious.
Richard, our signal is not the best, so I am struggling to hear you, but let's see if we can hear what you say on the next piece, which is 1.4 of those documents that the President has filed. It's declared that any steps, effectively what it's saying is that anything that the National Assembly wants to do should be found unlawful and invalid. So there is a bid here to suspend the processes expected around this issue in a parliamentary debate tomorrow. What is your view on the impact of this review application on that?
Well, it seems absolutely right that if there is any merit in this review application, which is concerned with the first phase of a three-phase process of impeachment, then there's no point in moving to phase two, because phase two should only be triggered when phase one is complete. And what the President is arguing is that phase one cannot be complete because of the flaws and defects in the independent panel's report. And so therefore it would be a waste of parliamentary time, and indeed it would defeat the underlying objectives of the constitutional and parliamentary rules to start phase two and to have the debate and then to set up an ad hoc committee and so on, unless that process is well grounded in a first phase preliminary investigation. The President argues that the panel got the law wrong, applied the law incorrectly, and reached inappropriate conclusions in terms of findings. And it's absolutely clear, and it's what I've been arguing for a while, that a higher standard needed to be met. The panel needed to say that there was sufficient evidence of serious misconduct or serious violation of law, instead of which they say there may have been some misconduct on behalf of the President. So that's the rub of this, the nub of it. And of course, alongside this, there is the NEC meeting going on today, which is the political dimension to this extraordinary and important saga.
Richard, to simplify for us, what happens now? So this has now been filed. He's gone directly to the Apex Court. This debate is meant to go ahead, tomorrow, which is not long from now. What happens in the space between now and then?
Well, first of all, the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting must conclude and must presumably let the public know what the ANC, the ruling party's position is. The party could decide to either accept the report and therefore presumably vote in Parliament to support the tabling of the motion and the triggering of phase two, or which would run contrary, of course, to the wishes of the President, who's made his position abundantly clear now, Iman, by launching this review application. By launching the review application, the President is saying, I do not accept this report, I'm fighting on, and I believe I still have every right to be President, and I should not be impeached. And so it's much more likely, I think, based on what the NWC meeting said of the ANC yesterday, that the ANC will back the President, and therefore, presumably tomorrow, the Speaker of Parliament will have to make a decision about whether to continue with the debate in the light of the review application. And as I said a few minutes ago in answer to your first question, the review application says that Parliament should suspend the process at this stage. It should not move to phase two until phase one is resolved.
So that message is communicated how to Parliament? For those of us who aren't, and for members of the public who aren't aware of the nuances of how that happens, is this automatically assumed then that this action suspends that debate tomorrow, or is there an administrative step that must still be taken that codifies that?
Well, I think the Speaker, who is one of the parties to the litigation, she is listed as one of the, I think, 5 parties that the President has brought this application against. The Speaker will have to decide whether it's appropriate or not. And I would think that she will say, given that the review application is it has been launched, that it would not be appropriate to continue with the debate and then the tabling of the report and then the process that leads to an internal parliamentary ad hoc committee process. That's the very serious next step in this process. And what the President is arguing is that second stage should not happen yet because the first phase has gone wrong.
Richard, thank you very much for talking to us tonight. Just to let you know, talking to our reporter earlier, the ANC is noting the report, throwing its support behind the President. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. Professor Richard Calland from the Public Law Department at UCT.